If Charlotte Mason's motto is correct, and education is an atmosphere, a discipline, and a life, then learning doesn't stop in the formal years of schooling. But no, it continues on throughout our life and is a joy and a fun part of life. Hence the birth of Mother Academia, a self-education trend among homeschooling mothers that I am so here for. And these are my Mother Academia plans for 2025. Hello friends, and welcome to my channel. My name is Haley and I am a Christian wife, homeschooling mother of 3, out to redeem my very own literary education. And in order to do that, I do have some Mother Academia plans for the year that I did mention in my 2025 reading goals, and that is to have an area of study in literature. And for me, that is going to be Greek mythology. Now this comes about because in my recent academic reads I've been slowly working my way through, I've noticed a really big hole in my literary education when it comes to Greek mythology. There are so many works of great literature that reference these great Greek myths, and I have no clue what they are or who they're talking about, and the only way that I'm ever going to be able to continue reading these great works of classic literature is if I brush up on my Greek mythology. And no work of classic literature has really pointed this out to me more than the Inferno by Dante Alighieri. This one is my academic read that I have been working on since December. I have 2 cantos left in this, which means I am almost done. And it has been some work and effort, mostly because of all of the Greek mythology references that I don't understand. So I'm really having to read the endnotes and the canto summaries at the front of this edition to be able to even slightly understand what's going on. So the only way that I can read classic literature like this moving forward is if I brush up on my Greek mythology. So after I finish the Inferno, I'm not going to pick up the next 2 parts of the Divine Comedy, Purgatorio or Paradiso, until I have learned some of these great Greek myths. And I'm going to start my Greek mythology journey like a child and read Delaire's Book of Greek Myths. Now I have this for my kids for later years in their formal education. We're going to be doing Charlotte Mason. I'm pretty sure this one is referenced in Ambleside Online. I could be wrong, but I've heard this is a great one for children. But it's going to be a great one for me too. I'm going to start here and just like a child learn some of the very basics of Greek mythology. This one is a pretty good start because there are so many stories in here. They're beautifully illustrated and they're short, and I think I'll be able to get to them in the morning during some of my mother's morning time reading that I have. And so I'll probably read one of these stories and then in my own narration notebook shortly jot down a narration of what I've just read for the day. And the next book that I have is also a book that just sums up some of the great myths, and that is Bullfinch's Mythology by Thomas Bullfinch. Now, not all of the myths in this mythology book are Greek, so what I'm going to do is only pick out the great Greek stories, and I'm going to discard the rest for a later time since my focus in my Mother Academia this year is Greek mythology. Bullfinch's Mythology also has some summaries of the Iliad and the Odyssey, 2 epic poems by Homer, who was the great storyteller of the Greek age, and I'm glad I'm going to be reading the summaries before I go into the actual epic poems because I think they will help me understand those stories a whole lot better. And I think reading those children mythologies and then Thomas Bullfinch's summaries of some of those Greek myths is going to help me when I finally get to Homer's epics, the Iliad and the Odyssey. I'm a bit intimidated by these. However, I've read 2 epic poems so far, and that's been Paradise Lost by John Milton and The Inferno by Dante Alighieri. And I actually really don't mind the epic poem form. It's actually really easy to read, but I'm intimidated by this one for the war stories and the focus on war because that's not It's not really my thing. However, I think it will be about a whole lot more than that. And this is one of the greatest books of all time. The Iliad is one of the most well-known. Homer is one of the most well-known authors. And if I'm going to read any great literature, Homer is just an absolute must. And you can't go into the Odyssey, I've been told, without reading the Iliad first, because this is the story that happens first. And the Odyssey is a journey that happens afterwards. So I think this book focuses a whole lot more on multiple characters of Greek myth and Greek legend. I feel like the Odyssey is more following one person through an epic journey and maybe a few other characters. So I think as far as the form of storytelling goes, I'm going to be more excited to read this one. I feel like in a college literature class, we read a piece of the Odyssey, like a small section, but what is that really in literature? I actually really hate how schools do that, which is why I'm redeeming my education. I'm not just going to be reading snippets, I'm going to be reading the whole full context of some of these great stories. And then last but not least, for my Greek mythology Year of Mother Academia, I just have a fun read, and that is Till We Have Faces by C.S. Lewis, A Myth Retold. This is C.S. Lewis's retelling of the Cupid and Psyche myth through the eyes of Psyche's sister. I've heard this is an absolutely wonderful book, and I know that the Literary Life podcast has episodes on this book. I absolutely love them. If you're trying to understand some of these great stories and classic literature, I love reading books alongside of them because they teach me so much. So once I've kind of gone through all of these other great stories, I'm gonna wrap it up with this one just for fun, because I think once I understand the stories, I'll be able to appreciate a retelling a whole lot more. C.S. Lewis was my male author of the year last year, and I absolutely loved all of his books, but this is one that I purchased and didn't get to. So I already had it on my shelf, and I think it's going to go great with my Greek mythology study for the year. So that doesn't seem like a whole lot of books. However, there are some really heavy hitters in here, and I do think it's going to take me the rest of the year to get through these books. If I take 1 or 2 months to read each of these books, I should be able to read them all by the end of the year, and that is my plan. Other than Till We Have Faces, my plan for kind of retaining that knowledge in an academic sense is by using my narration notebook and just summarizing what I've read after reading it. This does work. I have done it with some Shakespeare plays. After reading certain acts, I will summarize it, and it actually really does help to retain the story. And I think it's going to help with all of these. And once I read these, I will feel a lot more confident picking up the Divine Comedy again. And I even think before picking up the Divine Comedy again, I might try to pick up the Aeneid by Virgil, since Virgil is Dante's guide through the Divine Comedy. And it's got more Greek mythology and references in it. But I will absolutely not understand that book until I do this work. And I think doing this is going to allow me to tackle some of those great books. And that is my why for this Mother Academia topic. You know, because most people would say, why would a Christian woman study Greek mythology? That makes no sense. That's pagan. That's evil. And while I agree that if you were to worship the Greek gods, that would be pagan and that would be evil, I think reading their stories and understanding the history and the time is perfectly okay for a Christian to do, because Jesus walked in the times of the Greeks, of these stories, and Paul walked among the Greeks trying to evangelize them and bring them to Christ, and this was their literary tradition and background and religion. And I think it helps me understand the Bible times a little bit more, and why the idea of God and Jesus as a savior will be so much better than gods who seem to be fickle and very human in nature and unreliable. So I don't really feel bad about studying Greek mythology. I don't feel bad about introducing Greek myths to my children. Once they are older, my oldest daughter is 6 years old right now, and I'm not going to be introducing this to her until later. We are still laying that groundwork of our faith as Christians by reading our Bible every day and praying to God, so that when we get to these stories, she'll understand that they're stories, But I think there's still truth that lies within these myths that points to God and the greater truth. So I'm excited to be able to discuss those things with my children as they age, or even to be able to discuss them with other readers like you all. So that is why I, as a Christian, am going to read Greek myths. If you want to know more about that, the Literary Life podcast has actually done an episode on why you would read Greek mythology, or also even why you would read fairy tales as a Christian, and those are great listens. So that is my Mother Academia plans for the year. I'm doing a couple of more things. I have a male and female author of the year. That's J.R.R. Tolkien and L.M. Montgomery. I'm loving their work so far. I am also reading through the poetry. It's like a collection of poems from Byron, Keats, and Shelley. Some really great romantic poets that everyone has ever heard of, except for me. I had never read them before until this year, so that's also kind of a part of my Mother Academia. But this is where the academics really come into play for my reading this year, and yeah, I'm excited about it. I'm a little bit later in the year than I wanted to be because I wanted to finish up the Inferno first. I'm going to be doing a book review on that soon and talking about why I need to do this work before I go back to it. But I've still enjoyed it, so I will have some things to say about that. So if you do any kind of Mother Academia or self-education, please let me know in the comments below what you're studying this year, how you go about it, and how you fit it into your schedule as a mom or as a working mom, or just how you fit this kind of thing into your everyday life for fun. Because it's fun, right? That is all I have for now. I will see y'all next time, Lord willing. Happy reading!